The smell hit me first. Not coffee. Not the citrusy scent of Victoria's signature hand lotion. It was a metallic tang of a server room right before a meltdown. Only this meltdown wore a Brioni suit. Victoria stood at the head of the table, her posture ramrod straight. Her eyes, those glacial blue eyes I used to mistake for passion, scanning the room like a CEO should scan a balance sheet. Beside her, Julian Vance looked like he'd just stepped out of a GQ spread. My old seat, my old tie, the charcoal gray one I'd left in the dry cleaning pile last week. Buddy, Julian said, flashing me a smile that didn't reach his pupils. Glad you could join us. We were just about to get started. I didn't bother with a greeting. I walked to my usual spot, pulled out the chair, and sat. The leather creaked. Cut the shit. Julian, it's 8:55. We've got earnings in 10. What's the play? Victoria didn't look at me. She slid a manila folder across the polished mahogany. The play is restructuring. Ethan, effective immediately. I flipped the folder open. The header read, Organizational Realignment Memo. Below that, Chief Innovation Officer, non-operational. I felt the blood in my fingertips go cold, but my face stayed neutral. I'd spent 15 years debugging systems. I knew how to hide a Stack Overflow. CIO? I asked, my voice flat. That's a demotion. I'm the CTO. I run the technical division. You ran it, Victoria corrected, finally meeting my gaze. Her tone was clipped, the same tone she used when she told the marketing VP his budget was slashed. Julian is returning as president. He'll be overseeing all divisions, including technical. I looked at Julian. He was leaning back, steepling his fingers like some Silicon Valley guru. Ethan, buddy, no hard feelings. Vic and I both agree your intensity has been invaluable, but the board wants a more relational face for the company. Someone who can smooth over the ruffled feathers you've left in engineering. Relational, I repeated. I let the word hang in the air. Is that what we're calling nepotism now? Or is it just amnesia? Julian, remind me, who was present last time we had a Q3 outage that cost us $40 million in API latency? Julian's smile tightened. I hire people for that. Ethan, I hire you. Or, I did. I wrote the firmware that prevented the last outage. Julian, I built the load balancers you couldn't spell if I asked nicely. You haven't touched a compiler since your Stanford days. And even then, I'm pretty sure you cheated off someone in CS 101. Victoria slammed her palm on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Enough. The decision is final. Ethan, you will report to Julian. You will hand over your access credentials, your root passwords, and your office keys by noon. Your new office is in the annex, Suite 400. The annex, I said, the one with the view of the parking garage and the smell of burnt microwave popcorn? It's a perfectly functional space. She snapped. I looked around the table. Sarah Chun, my lead architect, was staring at her notebook. Marcus Webb, my DevOps chief, was studying his shoes. The rest of the VPs looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. No one met my eyes. They weren't just scared. They were embarrassed for me. I leaned back. Let me get this straight. You're replacing the CTO, the guy who architected the entire Synapse infrastructure, with a guy who thinks Python is a type of snake and Agile is a mindset, not a methodology. And you're giving me a title with no budget, no team, and a view of a dumpster. Is that about right? Julian chuckled, a low, oily sound. It's about scaling. Ethan, you're too focused on the weeds. I'm here to provide the vision. Your vision is a PowerPoint presentation from 2019. Julian, it's a ghost. You don't understand the architecture of Proteus. You don't know why we use Rust for the core modules. You don't even know that the Proteus algorithm, the one you can take credit for, is currently bottlenecked on a single node cluster in my office because it requires a level of hardware abstraction you can't comprehend. Security. Victoria interjected, her voice regaining its icy composure. We're concerned about security. With the IPO approaching, we need someone at the helm of technical operations who understands. Compliance. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Compliance? Julian couldn't comply with a hello world script. You want my credentials? Fine. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my key card, and tossed it onto the table. It skittered across the polished wood, spinning once before stopping an inch from Julian's manicured hand. There, I said, take them. But before you start patting yourselves on the back, you should probably read the fine print, specifically the Founder's IP Clause, Section 4, Subsection B, the one I drafted after Julian's last scaling disaster nearly bankrupted us in 22. Julian's brow furrowed. He looked at Victoria. What is he talking about? Victoria's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She'd signed it. It means, I continued, standing up slowly, that any core intellectual property, any algorithm, any code base, any proprietary protocol authored by me prior to Series B remains my property in the event of material change in operational control. Material change. Like, say, a demotion orchestrated by a biased board. You can't do that, Julian said, his voice rising. That's theft. No, Julian, I said, buttoning my suit jacket. That's contract law. You want to play CEO? Great. But you're about to find out that a house built on sand, or in your case, stolen code doesn't survive a high tide. You don't have a company without Proteus. And Proteus is mine. I turned to the room. Sarah, Marcus, keep the lights on until noon. After that, you're on your own. Try not to let Julian near the mainframe. Last time he did, we lost 3 days of customer data. I walked toward the door. Ethan, Victoria's voice was sharp. Desperate, don't you dare walk out that door. You'll regret this. I stopped, my hand on the brass handle. I didn't turn around. Regret? Victoria. I regret marrying a woman who thinks a charvatai makes a man competent. I regret spending 5 years fixing the messes you two made. But walking out? No. Walking out is the first smart thing I've done since I said, I do. I pulled the door open. The sound of the bullpen rushed in, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, the low hum of 100 minds at work. My work. I stepped out into the chaos. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel their eyes on me. The team. My team. The ones who knew the difference between a line of code and a line of bullshit. Behind me, I heard Julian's syrupy voice, muffled by the heavy wood. See? Exactly the volatility I was talking about. Now, who's got those server passwords? Sarah? Marcus? Someone get me the damn passwords. I kept walking, toward the elevators, toward the engineering floor, toward the people who actually mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Probably Diane, my lawyer, warning me that the shit was about to hit the fan. I ignored it. I had a different plan. I hit the button for the elevator. The doors slid open. I stepped inside. As they closed, I caught a glimpse of Victoria in the glass wall of the boardroom, her face a mask of fury and, underneath it, a flicker of something else. Fear. Good. The elevator began its descent. I pulled out my phone and typed a single word into the secure chat with Sarah and Marcus. Cascade. The response was immediate. 3 dots. Then, initiating. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and watched the numbers tick down. Lobby. Ground floor. Freedom. When the doors opened, I didn't walk out into a crowd of sympathizers. I walked out into a war room. My war room. I headed straight for the engineering bullpen. 200 heads looked up as I entered. The clacking of keyboards slowed, then stopped. The silence was deafening. I didn't climb onto a desk. I didn't need theatrics. I just stood there, in the center of the room, and let the weight of what had just happened settle over them. Listen up, I said, my voice carried. 10 minutes ago, I was demoted. Julian Vance is your new president. Victoria has decided that relational management trumps technical competence. Effective immediately. I am no longer your boss. A collective gasp. Sarah pushed through the crowd, her face pale. Ethan, what are you doing? Don't do this here. Talk to Diane. We can fight this. I'm doing this because you deserve the truth. I said, cutting her off. I looked at every single one of them. Julian Vance doesn't understand the architecture of Synapse. He doesn't know why we use Rust. He doesn't know that the pro-choose algorithm, the one he doesn't take credit for, is sitting on a single node cluster in my old office because it requires a level of hardware abstraction he can't comprehend. Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Ethan, we're with you. But what's the play? We can't just. The play is simple. I said, I'm leaving, but I'm not leaving alone. I'm exercising my right of first refusal on Project Chimera. Every line of code, every schematic, every proprietary protocol I've authored since day one belongs to me under the founder's IP clause. It's all in the Series A docs. Victoria forgot to amend it when she rewrote the bylaws last year to give Julian voting rights. She was too busy celebrating her vision to check the fine print. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Panic, anger, confusion. Victoria's voice cut through the din as she stormed into the bullpen. Julian trailing behind her like a lost puppy. Ethan, get down from there. You don't have the authority to take Chimera. I don't need authority. Victoria, I said, turning to face her. I have a contract and a backbone, something you seem to have misplaced along with your integrity. Julian stepped forward, his face red. This is corporate espionage. You'll go to jail for exercising my contractual rights. I asked, stepping closer to him. I was 6 inches taller, and in that moment, I used every inch of it. Read the contract. Julian, Section 4, Subsection B. I wrote it myself after your last scaling disaster. I figured you'd try something like this eventually. I just didn't think it would be this easy. I turned back to the team. I'm opening a new shop, Veritas Dynamics. Same work, better leadership. If you want to stay here and explain to Julian why the servers keep catching fire, be my guest. If you want to build something real, grab your laptops. We leave in 5. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the scrape of chairs. Then footsteps. Lots of them. Sarah fell in to step beside me. You're serious. You're actually doing this. I'm done being the smartest guy in a room full of idiots. I said, let's go build a better room. As we walked out of the building, into the bright California sun, I heard my phone buzz again. A text from Julian, you're making a mistake. There's no golden parachute for treason. I typed back one word, cascade. He wouldn't know what it meant yet, but he would. Oh, he would. The doors to the lobby hissed, shut behind us, cutting off the sound of the chaos we were leaving behind. I looked at the faces of my team, 200 of the best engineers in the valley. They were scared, but they were ready. Veritas, Sarah said, testing the name. Veritas. I repeated. Truth. It was about time someone in this town started dealing in it. We walked down the street, a river of talent moving away from a sinking ship. I didn't look back at the glass tower of Synapse Incorporated. I didn't need to. I knew what was coming. The cascade had begun, and it was going to be beautiful. We didn't hit a bar. We didn't hit a coffee shop. We headed straight for the cage. The Fremont, Colorado. If Victoria won a fight, she'd get one in the one place she couldn't spin with a PR statement. Sarah was already on the phone, patching through our transit letters to the NOC. Yeah, it's John. We're executing Clause 4B. If anyone from Synapse Legal shows up before 1,700 hours, tell them to call Diane Reinhardt. No, don't give them visual confirmation. Just keep the bay locked. Marcus jogged ahead, swiping his badge at the heavy steel door. The thunk of the magnetic lock was the only soundtrack we needed. Inside, the cold hit 68 degrees, sterile, humming with the breath of 1,000 fans. This is insane, Marcus muttered, dropping his backpack. If they call the FBI, they won't. I said, pulling a console chair up to Node 7. Calling the FBI means admitting they lost control of their IP. Julian's too vain for that. He'll try to fix it himself first. He'll try to lock us out. I tapped the keyboard. The login prompt glowed green. I typed in my root credentials. Access granted. Sarah, talk to me. What's the status on the poison pill? She was already jacked into the primary management port, her fingers a blur. He's moving. Julian just pushed a global credential revocation. He's trying to kill your root token. Give me 20 seconds to bypass. 20 seconds is a lifetime. I said, on the monitor. I could see the audit log scrolling. Julian's admin ID was everywhere, like a virus. User J. Vance, revoke privileges for call. User J. Vance, initiated lockdown on subnet 192, 168.40, 0/24. Let him revoke. I said, he's revoking access to a shell account. The real keys are in the hardware security modules. He doesn't even know the HSMs exist because I never put them on the network diagram he approved. Marcus looked over my shoulder. Ethan, he's rerouting the authentication tokens through the secondary proxy. He's trying to isolate Chimera subnet. If he isolates it, he can claim we're hacking the mainframe. Exactly where I want him. I said, if he isolates the subnet, he severs the link between the application layer and the database cluster. He's basically unplugging the brain to stop a headache. It'll crash the whole CRM platform. Suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled. Julian's voice piped through the facility's PA system, echoed through the cold aisles. Ethan, stop this right now. Security is on their way. You are trespassing on Synapse property. I looked up at the camera in the corner and gave it a flat stare. Tell him he needs a warrant. And he needs to explain to the SEC why his relational management style involves threatening federal employees. I said to Sarah. She relayed the message via text. A second later, Julian's voice came back, screeching, "This is corporate espionage. You're stealing trade secrets. Sarah, if you don't unplug those terminals, you're an accomplice." Sarah didn't even blink. "Julian, I'm an employee of Ethan Cole until my final paycheck clears. And according to California Labor Code, that gives me the right to retrieve my intellectual contributions. Now shut up. I am Busa." 15 seconds. She shouted. The door to the colo burst open. Julian stood there, red-faced, wearing a trench coat over his suit. Behind him were two rent-a-cops from Securitas. One of them looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Stop them," Julian yelled. "Physically stop them." The guards hesitated, looking at the maze of servers. "Sir, we can't just unplug the servers," Julian screamed, pointing at node 7. "Pull the power cords." I stood up slowly. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at the guards. "If you touch that rack, you are destroying evidence in a civil matter, which becomes criminal tampering with a federally regulated data center. You want to explain that to a grand jury? Or better yet, to your insurance provider when Synapse sues you for negligence?" The guards froze. Julian looked like he was going to have an aneurysm. "You're bluffing." "I'm not," I said. I nodded to Sarah. 5 seconds. "Do it." Sarah's fingers hit the enter key. Enter. On the main monitor, a progress bar appeared. It wasn't a download bar. It was a transfer bar. Migrating core modules. Proteus. Chimera. Aegis. Sarah. Status. I said, encryption keys rotating. We're moving the containers to the Veritas Cloud instance. Latency is stable. Bandwidth is pegged at 10 gigabits per second. He can't stop it now. It's a one-way sync. Julian stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "What? What are you doing?" "You're deleting it." "I'm not deleting anything." "Julian," I said, stepping toward him. The cold air seemed to intensify. Deleting would be malicious. I'm executing a geographic redundancy transfer. I'm moving my property to my new property. You're just hosting the hardware. Congratulations. You're now a very expensive landlord. But the IPO, Julian stammered. The investors, they need to see the tech. Then they should have looked at the org chart. I said, "Oh, wait." They did, and they saw you, and now they're about to see this. I pulled out my phone and hit play on a pre-recorded video. It was a screen captured Julian. 2 weeks ago, in a strategy meeting, he was standing in front of a whiteboard, drawing boxes and arrows. And this is where the Proteus algorithm lives, he'd said, pointing to a box labeled "Magic Happens Here." I played it loud enough for the guards to hear. Julian's face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen outside of a bruise. That's taken out of context. He shrieked. It's on the record. Julian, I said, and it's going to every institutional investor we have, along with a transfer log showing that Magic just packed its bags and left. Sarah looked up. Transfer complete. 99%. Finalizing checksum. Julian lunged for the console. I stepped in front of him, grabbing his wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop him. Don't. I said, you break that connection now, and you corrupt the only copy of the code you have left. And trust me, Julian, you don't want to explain to the board why the Q3 earnings are based on a corrupted algorithm. He ripped his arm away, stumbling back into the guards. You'll pay for this. Ethan, I'll sue you into oblivion. You'll do nothing. I said. The progress bar hit 100%. The screen went black. The hum of the servers changed pitch slightly as the load shifted. Because if you sue me, you have to prove in court that the code I wrote belongs to you. And to do that, you have to explain why the founder's IP clause, which you personally approved to screw me over, says otherwise. You're hoisted on your own petard. Julian, enjoy the view from the garage. I turned to my team. Pack it up. We're done here. As we walked out, the Securitas guard stepped aside. One of them actually nodded at me. Julian was left standing in the freezing dark, surrounded by millions of dollars of silicon that suddenly had the IQ of a toaster. Outside, the sun was blinding. My phone was already blowing up. TechCrunch pings. Bloomberg alerts. I silenced it. Diane called as we piled into the Ubers. Ethan, I just saw the filings. Victoria's lawyers are screaming bloody murder. They're threatening a TRO. Let them. I said, did you file the counter-injunction? Filed and served. Judge Gomez has it on her docket for Monday. But Ethan, the stock, it's going to crater in the morning. Pre-market is already down 8%. Let it. I said. I looked at Sarah. She was staring at her laptop, refreshing a trading screen. Sarah, what's the ticker doing? Down 12% in after hours. She whispered, holy shit, Julian's trying to buy the dip. He's dumping cash into Snap. SE to stabilize it. I laughed. He's burning cash to prop up a ghost. Sarah, send the Camaro white paper to the information. Every journalist in the Valley gets a copy. Title it, The Anatomy of a Ghost Ship. I looked at the team, crammed into the back of the Uber. Tonight, we sleep. Tomorrow, we build. And next week, we watch them try to explain why their relational president can't even keep the lights on. As we pulled away, I saw Victoria's Mercedes screech to a halt outside the Colo. She jumped out, ran inside, and a second later, the building's lights flickered. Julian had found the power switch. Too bad the power didn't matter when the brain was already gone. My phone buzzed with final text from an unknown number. Ethan, please, meet me, the ferry building. 8 p.m. I stared at it. The part of me that remembered the woman who used to debug my Python scripts with me wanted to feel something. But there was nothing, just static. I typed back, too late for meetings. The only thing we have left to discuss is the price of your failure. Enjoy the plummet. I blocked the number. The cascade was complete. The exodus was real, and the rebuild was about to begin. The WeWork in Soma wasn't glamorous, but the bandwidth was clean. I'd leased a floor under a shell corp, Veritas Holdings LLC, at 4 a.m. By 6 a.m., we were wired in, 12 monitors on the main desk, all synced to the NASDAQ Level 2 feed. Sarah was the first to speak. Pre-market's a bloodbath. Snap. SE is down 18%. Julian's dumping treasury cash trying to shore it up. Marcus looked up from his trading terminal. We're still green on the short position. The Cayman wrapper is holding. No leaks. But Victoria's PR firm just blasted a statement to CNBC, calling it a minor technical transition, claiming I'm aggressive automation that outgrew its utility. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. Aggressive automation. She's trying to frame me as a robot. Tell Diane to get the Series A docs to the journal. Highlight the signatures. Victoria's on every page. My phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. Cole. Ethan. It was Diane. Her voice was tight. Professional. Victoria's counsel just filed in federal court. Copyright infringement. Theft of trade secrets. Tortious interference. They're seeking a TRO to freeze Veritas's assets by noon. Predictable. I said, what's the judge's name? Judge Patricia Gomez. Hardliner. Victoria's firm donated 20 grand to her re-election last cycle. Then we don't give her discretion. I said, file the motion to dismiss. Attach the IP carve-out. Subsection B. Make sure Gomez sees that Victoria personally initialed the clause that lets me walk with Chimera. Ethan, they're going to the SEC next. They're alleging you manipulated the stock price, coordinated the walkout to profit from the short. I muted the TV. Victoria was on Squawk Box, looking like she'd slept in her car. A temporary liquidity event. Ethan Cole's departure was anticipated. We have a deep bench of engineering talent ready to step up. I unmuted. Let them allege it. I said into the phone. Our short position was open after the motion was announced. It's public record. I'm a private citizen reacting to materially adverse management changes. If Victoria wants to argue that firing your CTO is material, she's welcome to try. It'll tank the stock further when the SEC laughs her out of the room. Diane paused. You're enjoying the consistency. I'm enjoying the math. I said, Diane, prep the countersuit. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraudulent misrepresentation. Add a claim for emotional distress. Not for the payout, but because I want Julian deposed. I want him under oath explaining how Agile is a type of yoga. I hung up. On the main monitor. Snap. SE broke 20% down. The ticker turned deep red. Sarah pulled up a live feed of Synapse's production environment. Ethan, look, they're trying to reboot the primary nodes without the Chimera protocols. The load balancers are routing traffic to dead servers. It's a cascading failure. Record it. I said, high def. Stream it to every tech journalist in the Bay Area. Title it, The Sound of a Ghost Ship. Caption it, When Pedigree Meets a Colonel Panic. Marcus leaned back. Victoria's doing damage control on Twitter, posting photos of Julian overseeing the server room. He's holding a tablet with a GUI that hasn't been active since 2021. Pathetic. I said, Sarah, patch me into the Wired interview. The one Diane set up. I'll do it now. Sarah routed the Zoom call to the big screen. The journalist, a sharp kid named Leo from Brooklyn, looked nervous. Mr. Cole, thanks for taking the call. Your former wife is claiming you stole. She's claiming I stole my own work. I cut in. Let's be clear. Leo, I didn't steal anything. I exercised contractual right that Victoria Cole herself signed off on. This isn't a he said, she said. It's a read the contract situation. Critics are saying you destroyed Synapse out of spite, that you're a disgruntled ex-employee who took his toys and went home. I leaned into the camera. Disgruntled? No. Disillusioned? Absolutely. For years, I believed that building something great was enough. I thought if the code was elegant, success would follow. I was wrong. Success follows value. And value isn't created in boardrooms by people who can't tell a kernel from a corn kernel. It's created in rooms like this, by people who understand that technology isn't a buzzword. It's a craft. What about the employees who stay behind? My heart goes out to them. I said, they're victims of a management cult that prioritizes relational optics over technical reality. They're being told that loyalty to a brand matters more than the ability to compile a binary. That's not leadership. That's a pyramid scheme. Leo blinked. Julian Vance has stated he plans to rewrite Chimera from scratch in 6 months. I actually laughed. Julian couldn't rewrite a Hello World script without Stack Overflow. If he tries to rebuild Chimera, he'll discover what I've known for years. You can't fake depth. The market is correcting that illusion right now. Real time, I ended the call. The interview clip hit Twitter before the Zoom session even closed. Hashtag Value Awakening started trending. Engineers from Amazon, Google, and Meta began reposting it with their own horror stories of technical debt caused by visionary MBAs. My phone buzzed. A text from a burner. Ethan, Please, meet me, Ferry Building, 8 p.m. V. I stared at it, the part of me that remembered the woman who used to bring me coffee during Colonel Panics wanted to hesitate. But the engineer in me saw only a deprecated protocol. I typed back, too late for meetings. The only thing we have left to discuss is the price of your failure. Enjoy the plummet. I blocked the number. Diane called back. Ethan, the audio from the Synapse all hands just leaked. Internal Slack. Sarah's voice. She's tearing into Victoria. Play it, I said. Diane's speakerphone crackled. Sarah's voice. Raw and angry, a plan? Julian's plan is to rewrite Chimera from scratch. He told the board it'll take 6 months. 6 months. We'll be bankrupt by then. Why are we even pretending? Ethan was right. We're building with Legos. Victoria's shrill reply. That's enough. Sarah, you're out of line. Marcus whistled. That's the nail in the coffin. The coffin was sealed when Julian took the job. I said, now the market's just nailing it shut. Sarah, send that audio to the information. Make sure they know Sarah is one of the 200 who walked. By noon, snap, Essie was down 31%. The trading floor was in chaos. Victoria issued a statement categorically denying the audio's authenticity, but the spectrogram analysis was already online. It was her voice, her tone, her failure. Julian called me. I almost declined, but answered on speaker. Cole, you smug son of a bitch. Julian hissed. You think you've won? I've got Victoria's ear. We're going to the DOJ. Criminal conspiracy. Market manipulation. You'll die in a cell. I listened to him rage. When he paused for breath, I spoke, my voice flat. Julian, do you hear yourself? You're threatening federal prison because you can't resolve a get-merged conflict. You're not a leader. You're a parasite. And the host is coding its own immunity. I hung up. I didn't block him this time. I wanted him to call back. I wanted him to hear the silence of a company with no signal. Diane called 5 minutes later. Ethan, it's over. The board just forced Victoria out. Julian's lawyering up, trying to blame her for coercing the demotion to save his skin. And the company? Fire sale. Private equity vultures, BlackRock, KKR, they're circling. They'll strip the assets and sell the brand for scrap. I looked out the window at the San Francisco skyline. The fog was rolling in, but the red of the NASDAQ ticker burned through. Tell them to offer $1 and a public apology. In writing, from both of them. Ethan, that's not how mergers work. It is today. I said, because without Chimera, they don't have a product. Without a product, they don't have a company. They're selling smoke. I'm selling fire. I paused. And Diane, make sure the apology includes a phrase. Value is created by builders, not managers. Non-negotiable. I hung up. The team was watching me. Waiting. It's done. I said, Synapse is finished. But we're just getting started. Tonight, we don't celebrate the fall. We celebrate the rise of something real. We celebrate that in a world of noise, we chose to build something that actually compiles. I raised my coffee cup. To value, to truth, to veritas. To veritas. They echoed. The awakening wasn't just mine. It was the industry's, and the rebuild was underway. The Philip Burton Federal Building on Golden Gate Avenue doesn't have the best AC, but it's got good acoustics. I could hear the click of Victoria's Louboutins before I saw her. She looked like she'd borrowed a suit from a thinner version of herself. Julian was behind her, clutching a legal pad like it was a security blanket. Diane Reinhardt stood beside me, flipping through her notes. Remember, Ethan, don't volunteer. Make them ask, and when they do, make them regret it. I'm not here to make them regret it. I said, I'm here to make them understand. There's a difference. Judge Patricia Gomez entered. She didn't bang the gavel. She just sat down and looked at us over her bifocals. Ms. Reinhardt, Mr. Cole, Mr. and Mrs. Vance, or is it Cole? Regardless, we're here to determine if Mr. Cole's departure constituted theft or if it was, as the defense claims, a lawful exercise of contractual rights. Let's move. Victoria's lawyer, a slick guy named Peterson from a Century City firm, stood up. Your Honor, the plaintiff maintains that Mr. Cole engaged in industrial espionage. He orchestrated a mass walkout, destabilized our trading platforms, and absconded with proprietary algorithms vital to Synapse's valuation. We have emails. Emails where Mr. Cole reminded his team of their contractual obligations. Diane interjected. Your Honor, the espionage is a narrative. The reality is Section 4, Subsection B of the series A Docs, signed by Victoria Cole herself. Peterson glared. We're not disputing the signature. We're disputing the intent. Mr. Cole weaponized a clause he drafted to sabotage a publicly traded company for personal gain. Personal gain? I said, unable to stay quiet. Peterson, my personal gain was a severance package that Victoria revoked. My gain was keeping the IP I created. If I wanted to sabotage Synapse, I would have deleted the code. I migrated it. Ask Julian how many times I had explained the difference between a delete statement and a select into. Julian flinched. Victoria put a hand on his arm. Judge Gomez tapped her pen. Mr. Cole, restrain yourself. Mr. Peterson, call your first witness. Peterson called Julian. Julian walked to the stand like he was heading to a TED Talk. He swore in, adjusted his tie, and launched into a monologue about visionary leadership and scaling challenges. Diane waited until he took a breath. Then she stood. Mr. Vance, you testified that you intended to rebuild the Chimera algorithm within 6 months. Is that correct? Yes, Julian said, smiling confidently. We have a roadmap. We've onboarded several talented engineers who walked out with Mr. Cole. Diane noted, Mr. Vance, can you explain, in technical terms, the memory management model used in the Chimera algorithm? Julian blinked. Memory management is a complex process involving dynamic allocation and garbage collection. It's handled by the runtime environment. Which runtime environment? Diane pressed. Java, Net, Node, JS? The primary environment is Java-based, Julian stammered. Diane turned to the court clerk. May I approach the witness with Exhibit G? She walked over, holding a single sheet of paper. Mr. Vance, this is a snippet of the Chimera source code. Can you tell the court what programming language this is written in? Julian squinted at the page. He tilted it left, then right. It appears to be C++ or perhaps Java. The syntax is similar. A ripple of laughter went through the gallery. Even the bailiff coughed to hide a smile. Diane's voice was like ice. It's Rust. Mr. Vance, a language you claimed, under oath during discovery, to be fluent in, a language specifically chosen by Mr. Cole because of its memory safety features. Features you failed to implement when you attempted to rebuild Chimera, resulting in the catastrophic data loss Synapse suffered last quarter. I relied on my team for the specifics, Julian said, his voice cracking. My role was strategic oversight. Strategic oversight, Diane repeated. She turned to the jury. So when you told the board that the instabilities were due to a denial of service attack orchestrated by Mr. Cole, that was your strategic oversight. Objection, Peterson shouted. Calls for speculation. Overruled, Judge Gomez said. The witness may answer. Julian opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Diane moved on. Mr. Vance, you authorized a $50 million transfer from RD to executive retention 3 days before Mr. Cole's demotion. Can you explain why retaining executives required $50 million while your rebuild of Chimera had a budget of $0? That was a strategic reserve. Julian whispered. Reserve for what? Your defense fund? Diane asked. She didn't wait for an answer. No further questions. Your Honor. Peterson tried to salvage it on redirect. But Julian was a broken man. He stepped down, avoiding Victoria's gaze. Next, Peterson called Victoria. She was composed. Icy. She talked about building a culture and navigating growth. She painted me as a brilliant but volatile asset who couldn't handle collaborative management. Diane's cross-examination was surgical. Ms. Cole, you signed the Series A documents. Did you read Section 4? Subsection B? Yes, Victoria said through gritted teeth. Did you understand that it granted Mr. Cole ownership of core IP in the event of a material change in operational control? I understood it as a standard founder's protection clause. Standard? You didn't amend it when you amended the bylaws to grant Julian voting rights. Why? I. I prioritized other governance issues. Like Julian's return? Diane asked. Ms. Cole, isn't it true that you demoted Mr. Cole specifically to install your ex-husband, despite knowing he lacked the technical competence to manage the division? That's not true. I demoted Mr. Cole because his leadership style was abrasive. It was affecting morale. Abrasive? Diane pulled up performance review. This is Mr. Cole's review from 6 months ago. It lists exceeds expectations in 12 categories. Under leadership, it says drives results through technical excellence. Where's the abrasion? Ms. Cole? He questioned my judgment in front of the board. Victoria admitted. He questioned your judgment when you suggested using blockchain to solve a latency issue that had nothing to do with consensus mechanisms. Diane clarified. Is that correct? Silence. No further questions. Diane said. The jury didn't deliberate long. 45 minutes. Guilty on all counts for Victoria and Julian. Liable for fraud and breach of contract. Damages to be determined. But Diane's estimate was north of $200 million. Outside the courthouse, the cameras were waiting. CNBC, Fox Business, the New York Times. Mr. Cole, any comment on the verdict? Will you ever forgive Victoria? What's next for Veritas? I held up a hand. The crowd quieted. Justice was served today. But this was never about revenge. It was about value. For too long, the tech industry has worshipped at the altar of the visionary, the charismatic CEO who can sell ice to Eskimos. But ice melts. Code doesn't. Today, we reaffirm that the builders, the people who actually make things, are the ones who create lasting value. I paused, looking at the sea of lenses. Victoria and Julian lost because they forgot that. They thought they could manage their way out of a technical problem. They thought loyalty was a substitute for skill. They were wrong, and the market corrected them. Ruthlessly, I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. To the engineers out there, don't let anyone tell you your work is just technical. It's the foundation of everything. Own it, protect it, and never, ever let a relational manager tell you otherwise. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A text from a burner. I opened it. It was a screenshot of a job application for a junior developer role at Veritas. The name at the bottom, Victoria Cole. The essay was short. I spent years managing what I didn't understand. I let ego blind me to the value of the people who build our success. I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a senior role. I'm asking for a chance to start over. At the bottom, to learn, to build, to earn back the respect I discarded. I stared at the screen, forwarded it to Sarah. What do you think? Her reply was instant. Hire her. Put her on the graveyard shift. Make her fix Julian's bugs. Let her see what real work looks like. If she lasts a month, she might learn something. I smiled. It wasn't warm. It was a smile of a man who understood the long game. I typed back to Victoria. Application received. You'll report to Sarah. She'll give you the Synapse migration module's legacy bugs. Fix them. All of them. No management. No vision. Just code. Prove your value. I hit send. It wasn't mercy. It was a test. A final lesson in the difference between talking and building. I looked up at the San Francisco skyline. The city lights blurred, not with tears, but with clarity. The war was over. The work was just beginning. 6 months to the day after the verdict, Veritas Dynamics moved into the old Transamerica pyramid. We didn't pick it for the view. We picked it because the previous tenants, a fintech startup that confused PowerPoint with product, had defaulted on their lease. It was a ghost building. Perfect. My office was on the 48th floor. But I spent most of my time in the basement server room. That's where Sarah put Victoria. She was hunched over a KVM switch, her hair tied back in a messy knot, wearing a hoodie that was 3 sizes too big. She looked like a grad student who'd lost a bet. When she saw me, she didn't look up. She just kept typing. Status, I said. She didn't flinch. Legacy bug 482 in the Synapse migration module. Memory leak in the authentication handler. I've isolated it to the session token refresh logic. Patching it now. Her fingers moved across a mechanical keyboard. Cherry MX Blues. Intentionally loud. I'd given her the noisiest setup we had. Audible proof of effort. Julian called the office today. I said, he's working at a used car dealership in Fresno, selling Mazdas. Apparently, he's very good at relational sales. Victoria's fingers paused for a millisecond. Then she kept typing. Good for him. He always was better at selling things that didn't work. I pulled up a stool. Diane Reinhardt is drafting a new standard for Silicon Valley founder contracts. The Cole Clause. It mandates explicit IP carve-outs for core technical contributions. Every Series A deal in the Valley is adding it to their term sheets. I saw, she said. I read about it in the information. They quoted you. Value is the only currency that never depreciates. That was the subheading. I corrected. The actual quote was longer, about builders versus managers. She finally looked up. Her eyes were bloodshot. Dark circles painted her skin. I fixed 17 bugs this week. Ethan, 17. None of them were critical. None of them were visionary. Just code. Broken code that I should have understood 3 years ago. You didn't want to understand it. I said, you wanted to manage it. There's a difference. I know that now. She whispered. Sarah makes me review every pull request 3 times. If I miss a semicolon, she makes me write, I am a liability, 100 times in a text editor. No copy-paste. Effective pedagogy. I noted, pain creates memory. She looked back at the screen. Is that why you hired me? To cause pain? I hired you because you asked. I said, and because I believe in the scientific method. I had a hypothesis that a manager could be retrained into a builder if the incentives were properly aligned. So far, the data is inconclusive. She turned back to me. What's the benchmark? When do I stop being the hypothesis and start being an engineer? When your code passes a review without Sarah finding a flaw. I said, when you can explain the difference between a mutex and a semaphore without looking at your notes. When you can build something, anything, from scratch that doesn't crash under load. And if I never do, then you'll spend the rest of your career fixing Julian's bugs. I said, which, considering his track record, should keep you employed until retirement. She nodded, accepting it. She turned back to the monitor. Bug 483. Race condition in the payment gateway. I'll have it patched by end of day. I stood up. Diane's outside. She wants to see the experiment. I walked out, leaving her to the blue glow of the terminal. Diane was waiting by the elevators, scrolling through her iPad. How's the guinea pig? She asked. Learning. I said, slowly. She fixed the off leak. It'll save us about $2,000 a month in wasted compute cycles. Sentiment? Diane asked. None. I said, she's not here for redemption. She's here for re-education. There's a difference. Diane smirked. The Wall Street Journal wants to do a follow-up. The man who rebuilt his wife. They're framing it as a comeback story. Kill it. I said, tell them it's not a comeback. It's a correction. Victoria Cole isn't coming back. She's starting over. There's no narrative arc. Just a terminal and a compiler. Savage, Diane said, but effective. The Cole Clause is already being taught at Stanford Law. You've changed the game. Ethan, I didn't change the game. I said, I just enforced the rules that were already there. People forgot that code is law. I reminded them. My phone buzzed. A notification from our internal Slack. #Engineering General. Sarah had posted a screenshot. It was Victoria's commit log. Green squares. Consistent activity. A comment from Sarah pinned to the top. PR number 492 approved. First clean build in 3 weeks. Don't let it go to your head. Cole, below it. Victoria had replied. Understood. Back to work. I pocketed the phone. The elevator doors opened. We stepped in. Veritas is valued at $7 billion now, Diane said as the doors closed. 7, and we're not even public yet. You created a fortress. No relational presidents. No nepotism. Just builders. We're not a fortress. I said, we're a filter. We filter out the noise. The Julians. The Victorias. Anyone who thinks talking is a substitute for doing. The elevator began its ascent, up to the 48th floor, up to the glass offices and the venture capitalists and the world that still didn't quite understand what we'd built. But down in the basement, a different world existed. A world of terminals and compilers and the quiet hum of a woman learning, for the first time in her career, what it actually meant to build something real. The doors opened. The view was spectacular. The Golden Gate Bridge, the bay, the city sprawling out like a circuit board. I walked to the window. Diane joined me. She'll never be a lead architect, Diane said quietly, but she might be a decent junior dev in a year or two. Maybe, I said, or maybe she'll quit. Maybe the pain will be too much. Maybe she'll realize she's not cut out for the work. That's the filter. 2, knowing when to walk away. And if she stays, then she proves the hypothesis. I said, that value isn't about titles or pedigree. It's about the willingness to sit in a cold room and fix someone else's mistakes until you're good enough to fix your own. I turned away from the window. Come on, we've got a board meeting. Marcus wants to talk about expanding the data centers in Ashburn. More capacity, more builders, more value. I walked down the hall, my loafers silent on the carpet. Behind me, the city glittered. Below me, in the basement, a keystroke clicked. A bug was fixed. A lesson was learned. The long game wasn't about winning. It was about ensuring that the people who played by the rules, the builders, the coders, the ones who actually made things, were the ones who got to write the next chapter. I entered the boardroom. The team was already there. Sarah, Marcus, Diane, the people who'd walked out with me. Status? I asked. Sarah looked up from her laptop. Chimera's running at 999% uptime. Victoria's patch just went live. No rollbacks. Marcus nodded. Ashburn expansion is greenlit. We're hiring 20 more engineers, all vetted through the coal filter. Diane tapped her iPad. $7 billion. And climbing. The market finally understands what we're selling. I sat down at the head of the table, not because I wanted the power, but because someone had to steer the ship, someone who knew how the engine worked. Then let's keep building. I said, the world is full of ghosts. Let's make sure we're the only ones still breathing. I looked around the table. My team, my builders, my value. The meeting started. The work continued. And outside, the city kept spinning, unaware that the rules had changed forever.